between the time I started Sonic Sperg-Out and now, one important thing has changed. I actually started buying Sonic games again. To people who don't know that I even stopped, my last Sonic game that I bought for a long while was the infamous Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. The 2006 is just added by the fan base, as well as the haters, to distinguish it from the Sega Genesis original. So that was the last Sonic game I bought, and I must say that whole console was a disappointment for a long time. Like, if I was the sort of person who loved first-person shooters, I probably would have gotten a lot out of Xbox 360. But the original reason I got an Xbox 360 was just because I was psyched for Banjo-Kazooie 3 to come out. And when I saw that Sonic the Hedgehog was splitting into two games, one for Xbox 360 and eventually PS3, and the other for Nintendo Wii, and the Nintendo Wii was a railed game with forced progress and no exploration, I figured, well, I'm going with the Xbox 360 game, because, I mean, it was an outright Sonic Adventure 3, basically. It had adventure fields, it had multiple playable characters, it had a story that took itself seriously. It seemed like it was a good game based on the advertising. Of course it wasn't. They did a remarkable job fooling us by cherry-picking what they showed. And after that, I figured Sonic's dead. Like, it may survive, but I'm not going to trust a game anymore, at least until I hear other Sonic fans saying they like it, because I didn't really trust critics at the time. I still don't really when it comes to Sonic, so I just stopped buying Sonic games until I felt that there was a time they would come back to being quality. And it actually did happen eventually. It's just that when it did, I didn't really see eye to eye with the critics who liked it better. Like, I heard Sonic Colors was a good game, but a lot of the stuff it seemed to be doing didn't fit my ideal of a Sonic game. For example, it was getting rid of every character who wasn't Sonic, at least in terms of who could be played as. And it wasn't throwing in power-ups that seemed to be taking after Mario. And there was a boost. I really not a fan of the boost. But even so, eventually I started buying Sonic games again. Not at full price, but when Sonic Mania was announced, and I liked the idea of them hiring fans who were actually better at programming physics than they were, I figured I might as well see what's up with this series again, so I could talk about it again. I haven't bought or played Sonic Mania yet, but I did buy the Taxman's ports of the original Sonic games, so I have a feeling I will buy Mania at some point. I also bought Sonic Colors at a discount, and then more recently I bought Sonic Generations, so I can weigh in on the two best, quote-unquote, best games of the Boost formula, and state my thoughts on them. But really, I'm not gonna talk specifically about Sonic Colors or Sonic Generations, and I'm not gonna talk too much about Classic Sonic either. Actually, this is a modern Sonic episode. I could talk about Classic Sonic elsewhere, but this is mostly about what the Sonic series as a whole seems like to me. So I guess it's not just modern Sonic, it's also Classic Sonic and Boom Sonic, except that's not really a thing anymore. But this is more a talk about the Sonic series than it is about any one game or any one branch of the series. Like, basically, whether or not the whole Sonic series is what I like and dislike about individual games, and I will, but it's more from a broader perspective. I'm going to say what I think is the single biggest problem with Sonic games these days compared to what it was at other times, and compared to other problems that are less important, but really this is an all-encompassing problem that's preventing me from being too interested in this series again. And that problem is, as the title suggests, Sonic games don't seem to take place in a world anymore. I apologize for starting this with such a stupid, hated cliche. I hate that cliche too, even as a joke. And I'm not sure it ever was anything but a joke. I hate it anyway. I feel that Sonic games have lost most sense of world building, and they're not trying any of it anymore. And when they do, they backpedal out quickly, and a lot of the stuff they do undermines it. So, I'll give you two examples for the time I was still buying Sonic games last, and of course the two games that people consider the dark age of Sonic were Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 2006. And if you look at how those games ended, Shadow the Hedgehog basically ended with him saying, screw it, I'm not gonna care about my past anymore because it's such a mess. I don't even necessarily know what happened for sure, but I'm gonna stop worrying about it and live for the future and the present from here on. And then, likewise, Sonic 2006 ended with that whole game's plot being erased. It's almost like Sonic Team knew they had two bombs on their hands, so they figured they were gonna do as much damage control as possible without just canceling games. But so that was the first time it seemed like they were chickening out of world building. The second time that it seemed like they were really abandoning it was or I guess I'd say third time. The third time it seems like they were really abandoning it was with Sonic Unleashed having a world map that looked totally different from the world map that had been shown in Sonic Adventure 2 and the one that had been shown in Shadow the Hedgehog. And now with Sonic Forces they've had another world map that is presumably also different. So that's a big no-no for me in terms of world building, is your world map should look consistent to me if you're going to have a consistent world. But then there was also Takeshi Iizuka's statement that each Sonic game takes place in its own continuity bubble. So, like, we shouldn't care about whether Tails went through a lot of growth last few games, then suddenly the next game he's a whiny little kid dependent on Sonic again, because they could just retcon stuff. Well, I guess you could call Shadow the Hedgehog an example of that too, since they just sort of erased his memories again when he had him back in Sonic Battle. And I didn't like that. And of course they made him evil again, even though he had learned that Maria didn't want him to destroy the Earth in Sonic Adventure 2. So I hate that. I hate that they retconned out a character developing so they could do something again with that character. Like, we should have been done with the bit about Shadow being a villain or Tails being immature, but because of this continuity bubble crap, they can keep pulling that shit, and I hate that. Another thing from a plot perspective that they do that really undermines world building is what Sonic Dissected described as switching from internal to external logic, and that is essentially a reference to how characters think of things based to some degree about how the fan base, detractors, game developers, people on the other side of the fourth wall think of things. They don't even necessarily break the fourth wall in game so much as they make jokes referencing things that you wouldn't know based on your limited perspective of what happens in the game. It only makes sense if you have people outside the game who already know that stuff, the joke's for them. And of course the big example of this is probably the Sonic Boom TV series. It constantly makes jokes that seem more like the sort of thing you'd see in Sega Hard Girls. Like, you need to know the Sega Dreamcast existed to get a joke with Tails making a machine called the Dreamcaster that hypnotizes people with swirls that look like the Dreamcast logo. Also, you need to remember Sega Genesis advertising in order to find it funny when Tails says his machine has blast processing. And I mean, those examples aren't so bad, because even if you don't get the joke, it doesn't interrupt anything, and it doesn't seem out of the question for Tails to call things that even when he doesn't know anything, because they could just pull a bit about him just coming up with those words out of the blue. I mean, obviously, people came up with the name Dreamcast and the phrase blast processing out of the blue, so if it could happen in real life, it could happen there. But then there's other times where references to real life get a lot more notable, like Eggman saying Shadow is only the second most popular character in the canon. I'm assuming the first is Sonic, but I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how does Eggman even know about canon? How does he know that Shadow's a character? What has Shadow done ever in the Sonic Boom universe that has made him popular to anybody in or out of the series? I mean, the only thing Shadow did previously in Sonic Boom was show up with no reason for a boss fight criticizing Sonic for having friends. Like, that didn't make him popular with anybody in universe, And the people out of universe thought it was a stupid portrayal of Shadow too. So I mean, Eggman saying Shadow was only the second most popular character in the canon only works if he's referring to an entirely different canon, and even then, there are as many people who seem to be angry at Shadow as like him. Maybe not. But the bottom line is, Eggman should know that Shadow is a character in a canon. Like, even if they break the fourth wall, that doesn't even necessarily make sense to children watching, which are, I'm presuming, the, at least, theoretical audience of Sonic Boom. Like, if Knuckles says, this episode ended on a cliffhanger, he did. Well, they get that because the children know they're watching a show, so they understand a show where the characters acknowledge they're watching a show, that they're in a show. That's fine, I guess. But when Eggman says Shadow's popular character in the canon, children aren't going to know what that means. Like, they don't even necessarily have any past experience of Shadow. And, disclosure, I laughed at that joke pretty hard. But it's still an example of Sonic Boom relying on external logic rather than internal. Also a problem with Sonic Boom, and this is just Boom, I can't speak for the more recent Sonic games, but characters' personalities change. Like, there's a lot of jokes made about Knuckles being really, really stupid, like, impossibly stupid to function. But then they also make jokes like he can play piano really well, or he has some interesting insight into the problem with feminist rhetoric. So this show relies, or rather I should say relied, because it's probably cancelled now, it relied on rule of funny. It changed characters' personalities all the time to make them be the funniest they could be in any specific situation, even if it was an entirely different type of humor. Like if Amy being a badass ninja, ballerina, martial artist, gymnast makes sense in one episode, you can do that, but then if they want to joke about how she needs to get her hammer back because she's basically disabled without it, so they can bring in Vector to help her fight it, they don't do that. Like, they don't care. Like, Amy is the most inconsistent character in the whole Sonic Boom show. I don't know what she's like in the more recent games, and by more recent I mean anything after Sonic Generations, but that's a big issue. Like, if you're going to have good world building, you need to have consistent characters. Developments should stay developed. You can't have a character solving his amnesia in one game and then having it again the next. You can't have somebody taking a level of badass in one moment and then being weak again. That's stupid. That's not good for world building. But there's something else that you might not think factor into world building, but I would argue does. And this is the way the games themselves are structured. And this is something that a lot of people are already criticizing, is the official 3D Sonic games are constantly 2D. In many cases, they're constantly shifting between 3D and 2D. Some stages and colors are entirely two-dimensional. In Sonic Generations, with modern Sonic, it switches. But the thing is, when stages are constantly switching between 2D and 3D, they're arbitrarily yanking control out. People don't like that, most famous because it shoehorns in slower platforming sections, since they feel that Sega should be working on getting platforming working right in 3D, but because they have no confidence, they're just going to slow it down and put it in 2D. And I do mean slow it down, because a lot of the 2D sections are blocky. Less so in Sonic Generations and in Sonic Colors, but they're blockier than the 3D sections. But even when the game is 3D, it's so full of limits that take control out of players' hands. There's no more camera controls, really. The camera's just automated. It goes where it goes. There's a bunch of invisible walls blocking Sonic off from where he can go. That was one of the first things I experienced in Sonic Colors that bugged me, is that there were invisible walls everywhere blocking Sonic's path, so he just sort of had to explore where they said he could explore and nowhere else. And also, boost pads. Not even just the built-in boost. I have my own problems with that, but the pads that boost Sonic through places, oftentimes they aren't even there anymore to make him go faster, because he can go fast on his own with the built-in boost. They're there to prevent him from backtracking, and that really pisses me off to have fixed camera angles that are whatever Sega says they're gonna be, which prevent me from seeing the game how I want. And they've got the invisible walls, and the forces to 3D, and the forced one-way sections based on gravity, and walls, invisible as well as visible, and the speed pads. All of this combined leads to a Sonic world that doesn't lend itself the best to exploration. The irony is that since this whole boost thing started, Sonic levels have been getting bigger and bigger. They have been starting to have more and more alternate paths and stuff that's hidden, although usually it's just arbitrary stuff like the red ring medals, although sometimes that unlocks things. But the games have increased the size of their levels, but it's such a pain in the ass to explore them because of all the arbitrary limitations. And I mean, even when you do, there's not too much going on. There's the medals, there's extra challenges to get through, sometimes there's a shortcut, but there's not much you can really stop and enjoy as a fun little Easter egg. Like, there are exceptions like the wanted posters for Knack, the Insidious Escape, so there's that stuff. But these games, since they have a lot less focus on story than they used to, just don't use big environments as well as they could, which is really sad. It would be nice if they let me fully explore these big environments, had stuff going on in them, let Sonic move wherever he wanted, provided that physics allowed, like real physics, not garbage invisible wall physics. And that to me is a great tragedy, because in the original games, it really did feel like Sonic was freer than other platforming mascots were to explore the world in his own way, by built up enough momentum to pop off ramps or walls, that sort of stuff. That's gone away now. There's some of that, but because of the bad cameras and the walls, it's not where it should be. So I think that some things need to change. That's the big reason I'm not interested in Sonic anymore, although I'm more interested in the Sonic series than I've ever been, since 2006. It's not as entertaining as it could be, because the world doesn't draw me in. The series doesn't take place in a world anymore. It takes place in a set of race courses, basically. A set of glorified batting cages. That's what I describe modern Sonic games as. Glorified batting cages, where you go into a specific place and do the challenges in a specific way, and it's very clean most of the time. There's a clear failure and a success to every obstacle, at least in retrospect after you've failed before, because you can't always see things coming up, but it's so predictable, but I mean, it's so artificial seeming, it's so pre-packaged, that it just doesn't lend itself to any feeling that I'm in a virtual world. Like, why should I care about saving this world from an evil dictator when this world barely exists? Like, that's the big problem with Sonic Forces. There's just so little to make me care about the game that I can't have a serious plot about saving the world. Compare it to a game like Deus Ex, where you get to see how dystopian the world's gone all the time. That makes you want to liberate it from its dictator. But in Sonic Forces, I mean, I'm going based on what people have said, but I know it underwhelmed people, and it seemed underwhelming based on the trailers, so go figure. They need to give us a reason to care if they're going to do that sort of plot. Because if we don't care about this world that this series takes place in, if we don't believe it exists, there's nothing to lure us back if the gameplay isn't good. And as I said, the gameplay is lackluster to me. I think the boost stuff has a very limited appeal. I hate the arbitrary one-way courses. I hate the invisible walls. I hate the fixed cameras. I don't think things have improved that much since the adventure era, because a lot of things have gotten worse. So, I mean, if Sonic is to keep my interest, at least in the official games, it needs to do better world building. And I don't know when this is going to start, because, frankly, part of the reason this continuity bubble seems to exist is that they don't have faith enough in their own ideas to want to preserve them for sure. I mean, if I was crapping out stuff like Shadow the Hedgehog, I wouldn't want to remember that wasn't in canon either. But thing is, it shouldn't start with the intention that everything is gonna get erased from canon anyway, so nothing matters. You should at least make every new game to acknowledge the older games, and if the new game sucks, maybe you can retcon that out. But don't retcon out games that were good. So, that's my thought. Sonic Worldbuilding sucks right now. Hopefully it won't suck in the future. Alright, bye-bye.